Good afternoon, everybody. Fergus Dolan here from NALA. You're very welcome to our webinar today on resources and ideas for exploring money management. And we're delighted to welcome Sorcha Moran. Hi, Sorcha.
Hi.
Sorcha is an experienced numeracy tutor with Mayo Sligo and Leitrim ETB. So Sorcha is going to be facilitating today. So over to you, Sorcha, and all the best.
Thanks. Okay, so yeah, this is resources and ideas around exploring money management. And of course, that is all linked to financial literacy. So I'm just going to start off with maybe a definition of financial literacy. So this definition comes from the OECD. It's from the PISA 2015 Assessment and Analytic Framework. And you can see here, actually, in that framework, they actually even separated out their assessment of mathematical and financial literacy as two separate topics. So it's a hot topic at the moment. So this is their definition. So they say financial literacy is knowledge and understanding of financial concepts and risks, and the skills, motivation, and confidence to apply such knowledge and understanding in order to make effective decisions across a range of financial contexts to improve the financial well-being of individuals and society and to enable participation in economic life. So it's a big definition and there's a lot in it. So just to maybe pick it apart a little bit. So the financial literacy, it's viewed as an expanding set of its knowledge, skills and strategies, and really to deal with financial demands of everyday life. But it involves knowledge and understanding around key financial concepts, basic features of financial products, and the risks that might threaten financial well-being, as well as things like insurance policies and pensions. The skills involved include basic literacy and mathematical skills, things like being able to calculate a percentage, mathematical operations, but also language skills. So it's really a blend of maths and literacy. And we have to really give our learners the motivation and confidence to be able to seek information and advice also. To be able to then transfer and apply what they've learned about the personal finances into effective decision making. And that has to happen across a range of financial contexts. And, you know, where the person has to apply these might change over time. You know, their major decisions change as they go through life. So, the definition also gives us the purpose. So the purpose is really to improve the financial well-being of individuals and society, and also to enable participation in economic life. So the definition of financial education, it describes a process rather than an outcome, and they identify both non-cognitive and cognitive factors. So the non-cognitive factors, they include motivation, confidence, attitudes, and all those things which have an influence on money management and not forgetting behaviour. And then the PISA assessment chose tasks as well that were set from 3 different perspectives. So from content, process, and context. So the content comprises of the knowledge and understanding that are essential, you know, in the area of financial literacy. The processes are the mental strategies and approaches that they take, and then the context referred to the different situations that they have to apply those knowledge and skills and understandings, and that ranges from personal to global situations. So we're going to look at resources around all of these today, hopefully. But I think to begin with, it's really important to begin with the agreement that that there's a certain level of numeracy or mathematical literacy that's regarded as a prerequisite for financial literacy. So important mathematical literacy skills for financial literacy are basic arithmetic, so being able to add, subtract, multiply and divide numbers, decimals and common percentages. Also, calculator skills are hugely important, especially for those that struggle with the arithmetic skills. To have a number sense, So I'm going to be talking about that shortly. To have familiarity with multiple representations and numbers, and that helps with mental calculations. And to be able to estimate and to know reasonableness of results, so especially those using the calculator, would the answer look about right? And finally, we can't leave out reading skills, so we have to include financial terminology here. So I'm going to look at a few resources around these topics first. So the first resource is really a tutor skill as much as a learner skill. So it's the skill of being able to chair number talks in the classroom. So I'm going to try one here to start with. So hopefully you won't mind getting involved a little bit. So I'm going to give you a calculation to compute in your head. I'll give you about 2 minutes to think about the calculation. And then I want hopefully a couple of people to come back with how they came to the solution. Okay. So here's the calculation, 18 times 5. So if I could give you a couple of minutes, think about 18 times 5, what's the answer? But what I want to know is what was the process for you getting that answer? How did it come about? So if anyone was quick at the calculations, others might take a bit longer to think about it, but I don't know, would anyone like to suggest or offer suggestions of how they came to a solution?
I'm happy to source you if you want.
Great.
Good. So I would prefer to write it down on paper, but I normally multiply 5 by 10 and then 5 by 8.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And then combine them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so that solution is really splitting out the 18 into a 10 and an 8. So that's what I was talking about, the multiple representations of numbers there a minute ago. Anyone do it a different way?
So I see Emer O'Neill has made the same suggestion as Colette there.
Yeah.
In the chat box.
Perfect.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just did it the normal way, 5 8s, 40, and carry over the 4.
Okay. So like you would traditionally do it on paper? Yeah.
Oh, no, I did in my head.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. But it's the same method as we would in a column on the page if we were, yeah. Any last suggestions?
I'm just putting in here, Sarah. Yeah. I'm the weirdo who multiplied 5 by 20 and then subtracted 5 by 2.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly suggestions. They're looking for different ways. Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So because 20 is an easy number to work with, so bringing the 18 up, bumping up 2 extra 5s in there, and then taking the 2 5s off at the end. Perfect.
I see, Sorka, Joan McAvaney said she reached for the calculator.
Okay, fair enough.
It looks better from the workshop.
Yeah, so actually I forgot I can write in the screen. I should have been typing them down or writing them out. So the 18, one way is to split it out to a 10 and an 8 and then multiply each of those individually by the 5 and combine them at the end. And the suggestion there of the 18 adding on 2 extra 5s and at the end taking them off. So we're bringing the 18 up to a 20. And then afterwards bringing them back down. So there's a few other different ways, I don't know. Just sometimes people might do similar to adding the 2 extra 5s, where some people are good with maybe their times tables up to 12, and they might split that 18 down within the times table. So divide 18 by 2 and we've got 9. And then the 9 5s, 45, but then double that back again up to the 90. So kind of working within the times tables we've learned off. Other suggestions I've seen is instead of splitting the 18 out to a 10 and an 8, splitting the 8 out into 2 times 9. And actually, if I reorder that, 9 times 2, and now we have 9 times 2 times 5 instead. So we can do 2 5s 10, and then the 9 10s 90, and so on. So there's loads of different methods to doing any calculation. And I think that's really kind of key to what I'm getting to. So it's that I'm trying to encourage people to include these things called number talks in their classroom. So if this is the only thing you take away from the presentation, I think it'd be really valuable to your students. So number talks are where you present a problem like that to the class. You take all their suggestions, that you keep track of them on the board as they're suggesting them. And then afterwards, you can go back and you can link those suggestions to kind of existing mathematical techniques. So for example, you might want to link to something like the distributive property, or a multiplying by 10, adding a 0, things like that, that people might have done kind of in their head without realizing they've done them even. So you're linking mathematical properties to their methods. So there's 2 links here, so to nice videos that you can watch. So all of this comes from a lady called Jo Bowler, who has a website called YouCubed, sorry, not YouTube, YouCubed. So YouCubed is mathematical resources, but it's all based around getting people to kind of think things through, to problem solve, and to kind of come up with solutions that maybe our formula might have been developed from in the first place. So they're kind of learning through working it out themselves rather than learning off and using formulas. So a nice easy number talk to begin with is this visual dots number talk that she has here. Yep. So she just presents up this pattern and makes it disappear after a couple of seconds, and then just asks the class, you know, how many dots? Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's somebody else there. How many dots were in the picture? And you know, people will have seen it all different ways.
You're rushing it on.
Sorry, could we just mute?
Sound. You're all right.
Sorry about that. So we could ask people how they see the pattern. So some might see, you know, the 2 on top, 2 on bottom, 3 in the center. So they see it in kind of this kind of horizontal pattern. Some see it in the diagonal pattern. Some might see, you know, the 2 outsides, kind of like a bracket with the dot in the center. So they'll all visualize that they've seen 7, but will have visualized it in a different way. And it just really kind of introduces confidence into the classroom that there's lots of ways of seeing maths and doing maths. And the other one is another number talk as well. It's just a more advanced topic. So it's similar to what we did there, the 18 times 5. So where you have a multiplication, and she talks through how, you know, different people came up with the solutions. So these are videos kind of to watch a facilitator facilitating, you know, hosting a number talk in the classroom, and they're nice to watch, and you might start introducing them in your own classroom. And we can introduce them even in kind of our literacy level classes. So something like this, completing a sequence down with our level 2 learners maybe, and we can include number talks here around, you know, which pair of numbers did somebody take to kind of figure out the rule in the beginning? You know, what was their strategy around, or did they always just take the first 2 numbers or the last 2 or whatever? And you're sharing strategies, and even like things like, you know, making 10s or breaking an 8, let's say, up into jumping to the next 5 and then adding the other 3. So breaking your 8 up into different parts and things like that. So just giving them kind of strategies for breaking numbers and putting them back together. So why to introduce number talks? So first of all, for confidence, and we know number confidence is the key to managing your money, you know, just being confident you can work with the numbers in the first place. And it's that people can see more than one solution. and they learn from others. So often we see a solution and we kind of park it and we say, oh, that's the way it's done. But when we have these number talks, we learn that people are seeing it in lots of different ways, and you're kind of opens your mind to start looking for more than one way yourself and things like that. To get good at breaking numbers apart and regrouping them. To keep track of ideas and link them to mathematical properties. And it's the only method I think I'm aware of at the moment that teaches number fluency at the same time as conceptual understanding of a number. So it's a really good activity. The next resource I have is a link to this website, Maths is Fun, and in particular to this page on estimation tips and tricks. So it introduces a variety of techniques to use when you're estimating calculations. And it also has a lovely visual exercise as well, where it might show up, you know, maybe 50 triangles or something, and you have to guess how many triangles might be there. And, you know, I do things like the number talks around this, where you're asking the students, teasing out, how did they guess 50? How did they come up with that solution? Because there's like so many, you just couldn't count them. So, you know, how did they come up with their guess? And also, as I said, when we estimate or when we get good at breaking numbers and putting them together and that, we kind of find one or two techniques we're good at and we stick to them when we're estimating. Like we might always just round up and estimate from that. So I create worksheets based on this list of tips and tricks and ask the learners to use specific methods to do their estimation, and it just kind of expands their box of tricks when they're estimating, that they're kind of learning a few different things that they can use. The next resource is this is kind of place value, even for kind of maybe our literacy level learners. It's hugely important, of course, for when we are coming on to percentages maybe. So I think a lot of our adult learners, you know, this place value is a bit of an alien concept, because in school we might just be familiar with tens, units, and that's about it for adding, subtracting, but not the concept as a whole. So there's a nice little video here showing how to play this game. It's place value knockout game. So essentially you start with this board here, and you have 4 dice. Each player has their own colored little counters, and you roll the 4 dice. Now, I would prefer if they had numbers on them rather than patterns, which would match nicer in with the board. But after they roll the 4 dice, they can choose what order they want to put them in. So here she has put 4,652. So then she covers those 4 values on the board. So she covers her 4,000, covers the 600, covers the 50, and covers the 2. And the idea is you take turns, and at the end, when the board is full, the most counters win. And of course, it'll get more difficult. You have to be careful of where you put your digits in what place as the board is filling up. So they have to start thinking about it a little bit more. And last in, I suppose, our basic, before we even start looking at financial maths, our basic skills is, oh, sorry. I should remember that with the videos to click on, is our reading skills. And NALA have a lovely guide on their website. You'll have the link here, and it's a plain English guide to financial terms. So you might want to have that printed out and just available for use in the classroom as well. Or, you know, if they use an e-reader or anything like that, to give it to them digitally. So just to include that in your resources. So we saw from the PISA definition of financial literacy that it included both non-cognitive and cognitive factors. So the non-cognitive factors, we just need to keep these in mind all the time while we're working on the cognitive factors. So we have to keep in mind when we're teaching financial literacy that we give the learners access to information, that they know where to find the information, that we're increasing their confidence, and that maybe we're changing their behaviours through classroom discussions as well. And we're going to now look at the cognitive factors in kind of the 3 different perspectives. So the content, processes, and context, and I'm just going to give you resources from each of those individually. So starting off with the content. So there is consensus worldwide on financial literacy, on the content areas of financial literacy. And so these are the 4 areas. So we have money and transactions, We have planning and managing finances. We have to look at risk and reward and then set out the financial landscape. So we're going to look at each of those now. So money and transactions first. So it's important that students, of course, can recognize bank notes and coins, that they can identify different ways to pay for an item, for example, in person or online, that they recognize various ways of receiving money. So we could have transactions across the phone or checks or whatever, and that they understand that money can be borrowed and that the purpose of interest. So looking at some skills around that, actually just going back to that. So also that they can compare things of different sizes to calculate value for money, and also that they can access bank statements. So I think it's important that we show them how to use their banking apps or online banking, that they can keep an eye on their bank statements as well. So this is the first resource there on that, and this is around looking at value for money. So these I just pulled from Tesco site just a day or two ago. And so it's the same product in different sizes, and then you have different offers. So we've one that's just reduced, one we have 2 for €20, and just being able to compare the 3 different products on, I suppose, maybe the cost per roll to see which is the best value for money. So the smallest one, as we would expect, works out the most expensive. We have €1 per roll. But then the 9 pack, you know, we have 2 options. If it was full price, it would have been €7. Now it's €6. So what does that work out at per roll? So at the €7, I think it works out 78 cents, and the €6 works out as 67 cents. And if we come then to the big pack, the 16 pack, if that's not on offer, you're paying 76 cents a roll. So, you know, comparing both of those not on offer, which would be better to go for. If they are on offer, you make big savings if you buy 2 for 20, but then you have to think about other factors. Have you room for 2 packs of 16 in your press, you know, where you store your toilet roll? So, you know, maybe not. Then to buy 2 of the 9 pack might be better than buy 1 of the 16, and so on. Okay, so discussions around that. And another nice discussion topic is look at the packaging. So we kind of get tricked a lot by people trying to sell things to us. So they have all the tricks in the book. So here we have a washing liquid. They tell us it'll take 60 washes. We'll be able to get 60 washes out of this pack. This is the bit you put in, fill with your liquid and put in the machine. And in the, we've got 2.1 litres. If we look on the back of this, we can see that there's 2.1 litres. Now, if we look more closely, if we look at the back, this is our little container that we fill with, and they can tell us, you know, for the different types of water that we either half fill it or 3/4 fill. But if we look at the details of that, getting our 60 washes, the only way we can get 60 washes is if we half fill the container. Okay, so once we go to 3/4 fill in the container, we need an extra litre. And if we filled it to the top, which a lot of us, I think, just tend to just fill it and throw it in, then you're going to need 3.6 litres instead of the 2.1. So you definitely won't get your 60 washes. So just being aware of little things like that. Obviously, you should be able to probably wash your clothes on half. So just changing habits once you're aware of the impacts. And this time of the year is great for finding, you know, doing research for communion and confirmation, so for family events. So I know our local papers, all the hotels do have their little ads in, but some of them will give, like, say, a 10% discount for a group. Some will have the communion or confirmation child free. Some will have free child for so many adults or whatever. So they'll all have their own different ways of offering, you know, value for money. So you could set out a specific group of so many adults, so many children, and investigate which would give better value for money for that particular group. Another hotel, it might be better go to somewhere different if you had different, your group is, you know, maybe more adults and more children or whatever. So that is another exercise. And last one there then on this section is this Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. So I actually just came across this website recently. I don't know how I didn't see it before now, because it's fantastic. So it's got everything that you might need. So I'll be referring to it a good bit. So when this content part, you know, where they have to understand different ways of using money. So in this banking section here, there is a section on bank cards, and it just describes the different type of cards and, you know, the differences between them. So you have that resource there. And this website is really clearly laid out. It's got, we'll be looking at the money tools section of it in a bit, and it's got this money hub section, and then it's got a learning section as well. So it's really, really nice, and it's laid out lovely and clear as well to find anything in it. So next is being able to plan and manage personal finances. So our learners have to be able to, you know, identify incomes and expenses, and also terminology around maybe incomes like, you know, your gross and your net in your payslip, and being able to keep a spending diary and draw up a budget. And then to use that budget then to be able to enhance their own financial well-being and to meet long-term and short-term goals, to be able to identify wants from needs, to be able to reduce spending if they need to or increase income, to be able to assess the different impacts of different spending plans to meet whatever goals they've set out, and to plan ahead for future expenses like car insurance maybe, or car tax, and to plan ahead for them instead of maybe when it comes time to pay the insurance that you're paying it in installments and it's costing you more, especially the car tax. I think the installments option is quite high compared to being able to pay it, you know, once a year. Understanding the purpose of being able to access credit but being able to manage it correctly. The impacts of state savings and looking at different investment products, and also having a rainy day fund for unexpected expenses like car breaking down or something, instead of having to go for a loan when something like that happens. And also being able to understand how government taxes and benefits affect personal finances. So looking at maybe our national budget changes, and we're all well aware at the moment the impacts of government taxes on fuel prices. So things like that, sometimes, you know, government changes have an impact on our personal finances. So some resources around that. This is back to the CCPC website, and this is the money tools area. And it's got nice little calculators in it. So if you're looking at actually I could just click on it. If you're looking at the needs and wants, let's say, you have the spending calculator. And it's really nice that you can put in something that you buy regularly, let's say a bottle of wine or something, how much it costs, and they'll calculate here for you then, you know, what's going to cost you every month and what's going to cost you in the year. And then you can make decisions around that. Do you want to reduce your 2 bottles to 1 bottle or whatever? And also then it's got a very, very nice budget planner. I think it's quite nice and clear, this one. So it incorporates everything, and you can fill in how often you spend something, and it'll do all the calculations. And you can see here it's very comprehensive. It has everything in there that you could think of, and then oops, it'll calculate it all for you then at the end. So another nice resource there that's easy to use. Citizens information has information about our taxes, and especially taxes that might be related to your pay slips. And revenue, I think people, you know, don't often know what reliefs or exemptions or tax credits they are entitled to. And there's the link to the personal tax credit section in revenue. So it's just showing people where they can find the information to make their decisions. And what's happening more and more is, you know, these decisions, we're going to have to look after our own personal finances rather than government looking after them for us. So we have to go and say, hey, I'm entitled to this tax credit. Can you apply that, please? Excuse me. And if we don't, you know, apply for them, we don't get them. So, you know, the responsibility is more on the individual than it was in the past. And on the CPC website as well, they've got nice little videos, short little videos from the RTE show, How to Be Good with Money. So this is an example of one of them. So this is a girl that wants to save money. Her short-term goal is to save money for a car, and a long-term goal is start to save for a mortgage. And she states in the very beginning, well, the one thing I'm definitely not cutting is I want to keep my costs for my hair. I have to keep my hair. So after discussion, they realized that actually she has hair extensions, and they analyzed the cost of that and the impacts on that on her being able to save. And in the end, she cuts out the hair extensions and then just reduces her budget to manage her hair and to be able to meet her goals. So there's like lots of nice little videos based off that show, and the links are on that CPC website, and they're nice to show in class to create discussions around. So next is risk and reward is the next section. So being able to recognize that some financial products such as insurance, that they can offset risks, and being able to, but they have to be able to assess the policies for their own particular needs. So, you know, if you're looking at health insurance or house insurance, you know, what level insurance do I need to cover my personal risks? Being able to understand the dangers of defaulting on credit agreements and payment of bills, and knowing how to manage the risks. So like, let's say if they had unexpected things happen, like let's say lose a phone and then you're still stuck in a phone contract, you know, did you think about that when you signed up to this 2-year contract to pay off your phone? If somebody lost their job, or they had an extra child, or their health deteriorated or something. So being able to manage those if they came up. Also knowing the risks associated with borrowing money from formal lenders and informal lenders, and knowing kind of things about new financial products. So, you know, like Bitcoin, there's a lot of talk about Bitcoin at the moment. So things like that might be different or new, that people mightn't fully understand. So the last section here in this is the financial landscape, and this is helping learners to understand their consumer rights when buying in a shop or online, and then also what grievance procedures are available to them. So they have to understand actually that they too as individuals have responsibilities, and as I was saying with kind of our tax credits, also the same when we're getting loans, or, you know, when we're applying for different financial products, that we have to be aware of our own responsibilities and what we're signing up to. And to be able to recognize the content of legal documents. So when purchasing these products, that we, you know, really well informed, and we're not just looking at the money we're getting. And being able to identify what's safe and trustworthy, and you know, when buying online, which are safe websites, where can you load your card details, where shouldn't you share your card details, where to get advice on financial products, and also to be able to identify scams. So they're getting ever increasingly clever at the moment, and there's more and more of them. So just discussions around those as well. And also knowing and understanding the impacts of personal financial decisions. So things like spending and saving habits, that they don't just impact the individual, that they actually impact society. So our governments are getting more and more concerned about this at the moment. They're giving us more responsibility, but at the same time, our individual actions, they can, you know, have a wider impact. For example, people not having savings or not having a personal pension, and then, you know, what happens when we get older, or things like that. And also understanding the impacts of external factors, such as government policy changes, again, maybe relating to pensions, or interest rate changes. You know, would we have planned that when we were getting a mortgage? Impacts of targeted advertising, especially on social media, and peer pressure, you know, as well. So, you know, following influencers, kind of keeping up with the Joneses, things like that. So some resources around that. So back to the CCP website again, it's really great. So they have a lovely section here on scams. So you can see here they have everything you could need: pyramid schemes, phishing, rental accommodation scams, loads of things there. It's really nice. Also for shopping, they have a nice section on shopping. So what if you bought faulty goods, buying online, if a shop closed and you haven't got your item, things like that, misleading ads. And the last one there is actually how to complain. So they have lovely letter templates, you know, and telling you how to complain about the small claims procedures if you know you need that. So lots of information there to use and share with your learners. So next we move on to the process. So this is the student's ability to recognize and apply the concepts and to be able to analyze, understand, reason about, to evaluate, and then come up with solutions. So here there's no hierarchy among these skills here. So I think, you know, it's recognized that financial thinking, decisions and actions, that they're really not dependent on one or other of these more than the other, but really an interactive blend of being able to identify and analyze the information, then evaluate the financial issues, and then applying the knowledge and understanding. Okay, so we need to give our learners skills to be able to search and access and source financial information, and in different forms. So in contracts, in ads, in tables, and so on. Sorry, I skipped off there. And tasks we can use, examples there would be taking a look at payslips maybe, or at invoices, bank balances, and just being able to identify the different parts of them. Looking at legal language, so maybe terms and conditions on maybe an insurance document or something. Discussing the consequences of defaulting on loan repayments, and not forgetting financial terminology. So, you know, things like inflation, we're hearing loads of at the moment. So do our learners know what the word inflation means? So back to resources around those things. So Systems Information website has loads on your pay slips and your different types of taxes you pay. This is a nice video on YouTube, and it's outlining our Irish payslip taxes, and it's up to date. It's 2022 from the 2022 budget. And this is a document from the public service, and it's your payslip explained. So it just again outlines the different types of taxes that might be on a payslip. So next is analysing information in a financial context. So this has been able really to interpret, compare, contrast and extrapolate information that they find. So for example, things like maybe comparing mobile phone contracts or analysing different ads for loans. So here's two websites where you can compare different mobile phone contracts. And I think many of our literacy learners especially, they don't understand the terms of the contract and what's included, what's not included when they sign up. I had a learner recently that had actually headed off as a volunteer to Medjugorje, and while she was there, she was using her phone, and when she came back, she had a bill of over 2,000 because she had been using data that wasn't covered in her contract. So even though her contract should have been up and she should be able to change providers, she can't, because she's stuck into this new contract now where she has to pay back this money in small amounts over a period of time with them. So yeah, just kind of making them aware of what they need. You know, discussing, do they text more, do they use data more, and then comparing kind of what might suit their individual needs, because what might suit one person different to what suits another person. So next is just really where discussion in class. So if this is evaluating financial issues, and this is where discussion is really important. So our learners should be able to construct financial justifications for their decisions. So they need to assess, generalize, explain, and then kind of come up with why they made the decision. So we need to encourage critical thinking. This is kind of our number talks as a start to being able to have these discussions and everyone have different ideas. And they have to be able to make sense of the information, but then kind of form their own view of the problem. So the way to do this really is to present them with case studies. So you need to give them case studies that they can identify with. And I'm going to give you a few resources for that at the end. I'll come back to that, to where you can get case studies for that. We have being able to apply financial knowledge and understanding. So this is about being able to use the knowledge to take action. So for example, being able to perform calculations to solve the problems, but working out different options that's available to them before they make a decision. So, you know, would they take a short-term loan for 5 years, or would they extend it to 8 years? Things like that, and recognizing the relevance of their knowledge. So for example, the knowledge of the price of certain items that might change due to inflation, you know, so what they know now mightn't be relevant, you know, in a few weeks' time or whatever. So some resources around that is, I think, one of the key resources here, key knowledge and skills is really working with percentages. So our literacy level learners really sometimes, I think, just know the word and that's it. But it's really good to even get them to be able to get a 10% or a 1% easily, just by using place value. And then after that, you know, they can easily get 20% by doubling the 10 if they could get the 10 first, and so on. So it gives them knowledge to be able to at least estimate a percentage value and make better financial decisions. So just one resource I use a bit is this place value slider, and it's available at this link here in the skills workshop. And this is what it looks like when you have it put together. But it's a nice tool to use when practicing getting the 10% or the 1%, and learners can see that the digits jump to different place value columns, and it explains kind of the rule they might be familiar with of moving a decimal point, but they kind of can't understand why we move a decimal point, and it's really because the decimal point doesn't actually move, it's the digits that move, and it begins to kind of make more sense to them. And I think we also need to make sure that our learners can use the percentage function on the calculator. And they love to, like my learners, they love to take out their phones and learn to use the calculator on their phone because they bring their phone everywhere. So nearly all the phone calculators now have this percentage button. So it's really straightforward, but just that they have to learn to use the multiply when they would say of. So getting 20% of something would be the 20% multiplied by whatever. And showing them then how to get a percentage increase or a percentage decrease. And of course, our estimation skills come into this as well, that they have a concept of what a percentage is, and that they can gauge if their calculations look right when they've got their calculation, and that I suppose that they're confident in their answers when they get them. Another resource here, this is based on simple and compound interest. So it's a nice video that gives a visual understanding of the impacts of simple and compound interest. So both jars start with 50 Skittles, and they track it over a period of 30 years. And you can see here on this just how they fill up over time, comparing both. So you can see it's just visual, there's no numbers in this. So of course you can get your learners to kind of track the numbers, do the calculations as they're following it. Next then is another video, and this is explaining, a nice visual to explain, you know, the impacts of only paying the minimum payments on your credit card. So they use this glass of water that if you pay just a minimum payment, you're just emptying a little bit out of it, and then the credit card company add back on the interest again, and you're nearly full again. So you still owe almost as much as you did before you made the payment. And you can see it with this nice little visual of the glass going up and down, up and down. And it also outlines what it would cost. So how long it would take to pay off a certain amount over, you know, how many years it would take and what that cost would have been in the end if you just making your minimum payments. And that's probably going to play now again as well. Yeah. Okay, and the last one there then is, this is actually the link to this is up in the other site, the other page, and this is the video on understanding the pay slips. And I think the last thing in this section then would be to understand the impacts of paying in installments. And I'm back to the CCPC website again, and they have a nice page on what it costs for, not what it costs, but the impacts of the buy now, pay later option and pros and cons. So of course there is pros, but there's also cons, and just making learners aware that this is actually a form of credit and it can affect credit ratings if they've missed payments and so on. So we're going to look at financial literacy in contexts now. So the contexts that we should be presenting in our classroom are education and work, home, and so looking at payslips, savings for third level, risks and benefits to student loans, things like that, home and family, so the cost of running a household, you know, for example, grocery shopping or planning family events. Individual would be subscriptions, maybe cost of subscriptions, how they all add up when you have a few running together, your clothes and your beauty, but also things like keeping your personal information safe, especially if you're kind of shopping online or banking online and things like that. And the fact that when it comes to banking and getting loans, for example, that us as individuals, that we have legal responsibility and ownership on those now. And then there is societal context. So keeping in mind that individual financial well-being can't entirely be separated from the rest of society, that personal financial well-being affects and is affected by local community, by national, by global activities. So things like income tax changes, our local property tax, your consumer rights, you know, what if you're donating to charity, those kinds of things. So looking at, this is my favorite resource. So this is called Skint. So earlier I mentioned I'd show you resources where you could use case studies. So this was created by the Scottish Book Trust. It's available at this website here, this link. And this is a page out of it, so this is what it looks like. So you can see here, it's a bit like a comic strip, and I love it for the literacy learners because they have this visual, if they're not good at the reading, and you have this dialogue on the left that matches the pictures on the right. So it's a bit like a soap also, so it's non-threatening. It's something they're kind of used to. It's, you know, it's kind of set up a bit like EastEnders or Coronation Street or some one of those, but they have characters to follow, and the characters are making financial decisions all the way through. So in this case, she's looking at what it cost, you know, if she paid in repayments instead of, she wants the couch, but she's going to buy it in installments, and she's a single mother, so she has a lot of things to be thinking about. But it provides us with loads of case studies, and they're non-personal, so we can bring up all of these discussions and discuss their problems and their decisions without, you know, bringing up our learners' personal circumstances. It's nice and visual, it's non-threatening, it creates so many discussions, and it actually comes with loads of resources. So if you go to that website, you'll see a pile of resources. So I adapted the resources. So it was created for teenagers, and it's UK, so it's all in pound, and some of the things don't match up, like they have council taxes and things like that, so we kind of have to change it to our own context. So this is an example of how I just adapted it, some of the resources. So one of the discussions was around these wants and needs. So it comes with a pile of cards, and the learners could separate the pile of cards into two categories. Would they be wants or would they be needs? And then we had discussions around, you know, which were easiest to categorize, which were hard, which did you disagree on and why? You know, would wants would needs become wants? If your income reduced, would wants become needs if you had more money? Things like that. And how society tell us what we need, and how are those messages kind of transferred to us. So I've linked this to 2 level 2 modules. I think this one is the personal decision making module, and then also to the quantitative problem solving. So we kind of do the decision making around the discussions. So, you know, if your income reduced, would you reevaluate your wants and needs? What's the hardest thing about living on low income, and the hardest decisions you have to make between wants and needs? And then we kind of translate that to maths then. So to start looking at, they keep a spending diary and start looking at, well, what's in their spending diary? What's a want? What's a need? What could they reduce if they needed to? How much would that save them in a week? How much would it save them in a year? So they're doing their quantitative problem solving there. So they're linking 2 level 2 modules together. Another one then is doing a taste test. So bringing in 2 different brands, so maybe a branded and a shop brand product, and doing this blind taste test, see which they prefer. Then you're going to graph the results, and then working out the costs. So what's the difference in the prices? What would that work out per packet or per bar or whatever? And what would it work out per 100 gram? And then how much could they save if they had switched to the cheaper brand over time? And 2 other resources around that. So it's similar to this Skint, where you have case studies, but I suppose these are specifically Irish. So back again to CCPC website. So they have 2, what would I call them, 2 educational websites as well. So they have this Money Matters for Junior Cycle. And you can see here you have access to different sections. So money talks, talking about money, then following money, then taking control of money, and then keeping yourself covered. And you've got teachers' resources and student resources. So we have case studies built in this. You have worksheets built in. You have answers, you know, so all the work is done there for you for if you wanted to introduce any of that in the classroom. And then they have something similar then as well for the Leaving Cert Applied. So they have different resources for Leaving Cert Applied, again, to teacher area and student area. And again, you have lesson plans done out, and you'll have case studies and everything there. So you can click this link and go to that. So there's a whole pile of resources there available. So I kind of flown through that because I was trying to fit everything in if I could, but yeah, sorry if I went too fast, but that's everything I could throw at you within the specific time frame. So I don't know if anyone wants to share anything or share resources they find really good, or any other comments.
Sorcha, thanks a million. That was fantastic. So many resources.
There's a lot, and for every level.
Every level, and demonstration of how they could be used. So feel free to unmute and ask sort of a question, or add a comment, or mention a financial or budgeting resource that you use or you like. So a few people have just typed in great resources, and thank you.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic overview from Joan. Thanks, Joan. So people definitely liked it. So, okay, is there anything, does anyone want to unmute and add another resource or ask a question of Sorcha? No. I think we'll leave it there then. So just leaves me again to say thanks so much for Saoirse for huge preparations. You really packed in so many ideas there. There must be a number of things that you've seen there that you think, yeah, I can use or I can adapt. And I even like the way she took Skint and adapted it for her learners, her students. So thanks, Saoirse, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you found something of interest there. As I say, after this afternoon, I'll send on Sorcha's presentation to you. So thanks everyone, and we'll end it there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye-bye. Thanks, Sinead.